A bitch is back. She is ready to start back posting consistent content for you hoes. Consistent content. Honestly, it's your mother effort's fault for believing me. But either way, hi, Happy New Year. It's January the 1st. At least the day I'm filming this. I don't know if it will upload on January the 1st, but it's January the 1st, which means that 2018 has died. She has now left the building. She is no longer a part of our lives, and we are in 2019. So I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you all of the things that you want in 2019, whether it's to travel, whether it's new books, whether it's a new car, whether it's a new house, whether it's a new man. Bitch, I hope you fucking get it this year. Today, though, we will be throwing back to my final read of 2018, which also happened to be my favorite read of 2018. This is also coming in lieu of a wrap-up because this is the only book that I read in December, and it was the only book that I had read since August. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm doing BookTube. Like, I know you don't have to read that much to be on BookTube, but you should at least, like, read. Anyways, the book that I'm talking about is A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahada Mafi, and today I'm going to be explaining to you why this book is better than your fave. I knew this book was going to snatch my wig. I had a feeling it was going to snatch my wig, but it ultimately ended up snatching my whole entire fucking cranium. By the time I was finished with my book, my brain was exposed, or what was left of my brain at least, because I just had my first semester at grad school. A Very Large Expanse of Sea is Mafi's first young adult contemporary novel. She is very much known for the Shatami series and the Furthermore series, which are all like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian types of things. This one, however, is set in 2002 in our world, and it's following an Iranian-American Muslim girl called Shirin. She wears the hijab, and living in this very hostile post-9/11 environment in a small town, she becomes the site for a lot of xenophobia, Islamophobia, and racism. So we're looking at her as she is navigating a sea of assholes in the American democracy, and we're exploring how she feels about it, why she kind of like masks herself off from the rest of the world and kind of sticks within her own bubble and doesn't really talk to anybody because of the trauma that she's experienced, because of the Islamophobia and racism that has been going on. But ultimately, the crux of this story is about her relationship with this boy called Ocean. Ocean is a white boy, and she kind of falls for him and he kind of falls for her, and that causes a problem. So the thing about this romance is that it is like the main aspect of the book. The book is about how they navigate their relationship, how they express their feelings towards each other in this kind of complicated situation. And going into this book, I was afraid that that would take away from the story because I was looking forward to reading a story about a young American Muslim teenager who is experiencing Islamophobia in the immediate post-9/11 era. But that's exactly what this book is about, even though it centers on the relationship. Mafi uses the relationship in this book as a canvas to talk about Islamophobia, and it's so fucking brilliant. I didn't really care for the romance. I didn't really like think of them as my OTP and oh my god, I'm shipping them. Like, you know, if you do, that's cute. You know, it was a great romance at the end of the day. I didn't care about their romance. I cared more about the social implications of their romance and how that was explored in this story. And that's what this book is ultimately about. It's brilliant because Mafi uses this romance and this relationship to talk about not only Islamophobia but American patriotism as a response or as a, you know, derivative of their Islamophobia, and I love that. There's this kind of like hyper-patriotic conservative American culture that we see especially under the Stalebreads administration, but it comes up in this book as well, especially because the 9/11 era sort of catalyzed that behavior and that, you know, mentality. So everybody's all like, yes, America, America, land of the free, home of the brave, whatever the fuck it is, I don't know. And Ocean embodies the perfect American boy. He's white, he's athletic, he's, you know, he's an all-rounder. That is exactly what the stereotypical, prototypical American man must be. But Shirin is the complete opposite. She is everything that is seen as anti-American. She's non-white, she's Middle Eastern, she's Muslim, and not only is she Muslim, but she is visibly Muslim because of the hijab. So Ocean being in a relationship with her is him essentially sort of betraying his Americanness. It's going outside of his Americanness and tainting his Americanness. But he's never really held to account for that, and that's another thing that this book addresses, which is why I think it's really great. It talks about woman blaming. Shirin is ultimately seen as the distraction. She's seen as the one who's luring him away from his duties as a young American boy and all that kind of shit. This book excellently handles that discussion of what it means to be American, what it means to be patriotic, and what it means to be an outlier to that very narrative. And I loved it so much for that reason alone, but I loved it for other reasons too. I loved the writing style in here. That's something that a lot of people actually complain about. I thought it was done really well because it's very blunt and crass to capture the disposition of this main protagonist. The main protagonist in this book is a bitch, and I fucking loved her for that. She's understandably so, because she's living in one of the most hostile environments, and it's so frustrating because, you know, somebody might read this book and be like, oh, it's too extreme, none of that stuff could really happen, but then you hear that this book is actually inspired by the author's own actual personal lived experiences. And you could understand why going through all that kind of shit she would want to bar herself up from the rest of the world. But that's also part of her character development, because she has to learn throughout the novel to think with more nuance than that. Yes, the world is a shitty place and people are treating you horrible, but at the end of the day, not everybody is like that. So sometimes you kind of have to let down your guard a little bit. Another aspect of her character development would have also been related to the whole woman blaming thing. She was internalizing that. Sis felt like if it was her fault, like this whole thing was her fault. If she had just stayed away from Ocean, then none of this would happen. But at the end of the day, it wasn't her fault. It was the fault of the awful, disgusting people around her. So that was another thing that she kind of had to come to a realization about. I will say though, and this wasn't enough for this book to get less than 5 stars for me, but I would have liked to see a little bit more of the side characters. They were all really well done and really well presented, but we didn't get enough of them, and it left something to be desired about this book. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes books leave things to be desired. You know, not getting enough out of all of the characters in this book, especially a character called Amna, who is the only other Muslim girl in the school, made me think about this book a lot more. So I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing at the end of the day, so it didn't really affect my 5-star rating, but I just thought I would point it out to you all there. The final thing that I have to talk about with regards to this book is the main character's identity and how she, you know, conceptualizes herself within this story. She talks about what the hijab means for her. On page 49, there was this just glorious page that I posted on Twitter, and I fucking adored that page in particular. That was one of my favorite parts of this book. And she talked about how for her, the hijab is not about morality. It's not about hiding and covering up your beauty, which theologically that is the purpose of the hijab. But for her, the hijab is just a preference. It's something that she wears, it's something that represents herself, and I think that's a very transgressive way of thinking, and I absolutely love that. It's not going to sit well with all Muslims because, again, theologically, the hijab is it's fraught. It at times comes with these ideas of respectability and morality and modesty and that kind of stuff, but a lot of Muslim women, in reality, realistically speaking, they don't necessarily wear the hijab for that purpose. They wear it because they want to represent their religion, they wear it because they feel comfortable in it, and they wear it for myriads and millions of different reasons. And that's why she said on that page as well that she can't speak for all Muslim women, because all Muslim women decide differently when it comes to wearing or not wearing the hijab. Hi, future Saajid here, looking kind of crusty and poorly lit, but we'll deal with it. I realized that I forgot to talk about something very important about this book, and that was the whole breakdancing aspect. Our main protagonist is a breakdancer, and she breakdances with her brothers and his friends / her friends, and that was an enormous means through which she coped with all of the shit that was going on in her high school. But I realized not only didn't I talk about that, but I didn't talk about a lot of things with regards to this book. I didn't talk about her relationship with the boy, I didn't talk about like the friendship stuff, I didn't talk about the family stuff, and all of those things were done really great. But I feel like that stuff and the breakdancing and all of these different things are the main things that most people took away from this book, including myself. But I also took away a lot more when it came to the identity politics in this story. I read a lot into that. That's why I was focused more in this review. You know, upon watching it, I realized I was focused more on the hijab and what it means for her and what it means to be, you know, an outlier to American society and American patriotism and all these different types of things. I just found those things to be so interesting, and I didn't see a lot of people talking about that. I'm not saying that people don't realize that. Obviously, that's the main aspect of this story, but I feel like I haven't seen anybody talked about it in that way as yet, right, in any of the reviews and any of the wrap-ups that I've seen where people talk about this book. So I just felt it necessary to focus on those things, and that's why I talked about those things more than anything else and more than any other aspect of this book. So I just thought that I would kind of slip in from the future and let you hoes know that. So let's go back to past Saajid. This book was just absolutely phenomenal. It was a beautiful way to end off the year. I went through a really bad reading slump in the last months coming down, and this definitely took me out of that. All I want to do now always fucking read. So thank you so much to Heather Murphy for writing this book. You don't know what you did for me. I am going to rename this book A Very Large Expanse of Tea, because that's all this book did. It spilled the fucking tea. If you loved this book, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you didn't like this book, that's okay. It's fine to not like the same books as I do. It's fine to not have good taste in literature. I cannot recommend A Very Large Expanse of Sea enough. It watered my crops, it fed my children, it balanced my pH. It just did everything I needed it to do for me. So please, please, please put this on your 2019 TBR if you haven't already, or if you haven't read it already. And I almost forgot, but I wanted to recommend another book. Hold on. Fuck. Oh. So the other book that I'd like to recommend to y'all is The Lines We Cross by Randa Abdel Fattah. This was, oddly enough, my favorite book of 2017. It's set in Australia, and we're following a boy called Michael and a girl called Mina. Michael is from a very white conservative family. They have a right-wing organization. They're Islamophobic. They're literally everything that's horrible in a person. And Mina originally came over to Australia as an Afghanistani refugee when she was 7 years old. And the book is about how the two of them meet and their ideals clash, and throughout the entire thing, it's about how Mina is sort of coping with the trauma of her past, and how Michael is seeing that his parents' perspective is not necessarily the most healthy or, you know, good, overall good perspective, obviously. So it's a really great story with regards to the development of these two characters, and I think it's very similar to A Very Large Expanse of Sea in many different ways, and it's a lot more expansive, no pun intended, because you get the perspective of not only the girl but the boy as well. So you get to see how his growth happened internally from his own perspective, and I loved that about this book. It is just so fucking brilliant, and it reminded me a lot of A Very Large Expanse of Sea. So if you liked A Very Large Expanse of Sea, if you want to read more books like that, please, please, please read this one. It's very underhyped. Nobody ever talks about it. It's one of the most obscure underdog books on BookTube, and it does not deserve to be that because it's fucking incredible. So please pick it up. Don't mind the ugly cover. I think the UK cover is prettier. It's also published as When Michael Met Mina in Australia itself. That was the original title of the book, and the cover is a lot more cute in the Australian edition as well. So please, please, please go ahead and pick this book up, and pick this book up, and pick up all of the books that I say to pick up because I said so. So all of that being said, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day. I hope you have a lovely, lovely 2019, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.